Hello and welcome in to the Retirement Playbook. I am your host, Brock Alspaugh. I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Tony Shore, and this is brought to you by Alspaugh Wealth Management. Good morning, Tony. How are you, buddy?
I am wow, with an intro like that, I have to be good. I mean, I absolutely have
Hey,
to be
hey,
great.
the coffee is a-flowing, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. It is. It is.
Uh,
I have to have about 20 cups of coffee in the morning just to keep up with you on the show.
yeah. Come
Yeah.
on. You got to keep up. All right. Well, listen, I hope everybody's doing wonderful out there. We are hitting into summertime. The kids have graduated. Tony, I have a kid that is now graduated from high school. Can you
Wow.
believe that?
You do
I'm
not
not
you
that
must
old.
have started young. What did you have them when you were 17 or?
Yeah, exactly. How did you guess? Anyway, so yeah, graduation is come and gone, and so now we're heading into summertime, and everybody's planning their vacations or getting ready to go on their vacations. I'm sure. So, Tony, do you have anything planned for this summer?
Well, this Saturday, my daughter graduates from college.
From
So I'm
college?
a little, a little bit older, a little bit
Okay,
different. You
just
had
by a little bit. Just
a
by a little
high
bit.
school graduate. I have a college graduate. My second, actually. My oldest graduated from college 3 years ago, and my
Okay.
youngest is my middle child is graduating this weekend. In fact,
Wow.
yeah, and we're really proud of her. Double major, already landed a full-time job, ready to go. Her salary's going to
Awesome.
be
Off the payroll.
salary's more than mine. So I told her she's going to take me out to lunch. She's
Heck
got a
yeah.
pretty hefty job right out of college. I
That's
mean,
awesome. That's what you
yeah.
want, right? Get them off the payroll and
Yes.
successful and all the things.
Yeah.
So,
It's just like, hey, auto insurance, car payments, cell
boom,
phone bill. Boom. Here you go. And just
boom.
you know what your graduation gift is?
You get to start paying these bills. Oh,
You
man.
get a bunch of bills. No.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm proud of her. So that's, I've got
very
that.
good.
I've got a couple other friends and people, some of her boyfriend is also graduating, so we've got that. So a
Okay.
lot going on
Very
this
good.
summer
Very
and
good. Yeah.
traveling. How about you? You're
Yeah.
traveling though soon. You're going to go up to Quebec, right?
Yeah, we're going to Quebec City up in Canada
Big
there. So,
financial conference,
yeah,
right?
big financial conference with Gradient Financial Group. So, yeah, going to explore the city and, to learn a few things, right?
Bone
At
up on your
the
French.
Yep, exactly.
They
You
don't.
know what's funny is that Danielle is actually doing that, my wife. So she's actually downloaded some kinda app or
That's
whatever.
really good.
Yeah, and she actually has a baseline though, because she took, that's what her foreign language was in school.
Oh,
She took
really?
French instead of
Okay.
Spanish. So
Well,
so yeah, she's
Danielle's gonna love it up there, and they're gonna love
yeah,
her. You, not so much,
yeah, they're gonna hate me.
because
Yeah, they're gonna hate me. Yeah, I don't know.
well, in Quebec, if you don't speak, French, it's a little rough. Some of the locals it's a little
Yeah,
rough, but
well, we'll see.
it's a
We'll see now. So
beautiful, beautiful city.
I've
I've
heard
been
it's
there.
beautiful, yeah. Oh, you have? Okay,
Oh,
good.
yeah,
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 yep, good.
yeah. I love Canada.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Well, we've been to Canada a couple times, different areas, and
Yeah.
it's been good. Anyway, listen, today's show
Yes.
is not about traveling
Well,
for
it isn't?
Tony and Brock.
Huh.
No, it's actually about recession fears are easing, right? So if you just remember back a couple months ago here, Tony, everybody was kind of like, whoa, a little bit scared. We had the tariffs, that the escalation of the conversations, right, were
Right.
coming about, and people were getting a little bit nervous about, okay, is this going to throw us into a recession? We've been talking about a recession actually for several years. If you remember back, Tony, just a couple years ago and all the way up until last year, we had that inverted yield curve, right, where the 2-year treasury was paying a higher rate of interest than the 10-year. And so that was always been kind of a sign of a recession to come. So there's always been some conversations about a recession here in the last few years. And now the tariff conversation definitely escalated that as well. And so now, though, April was rough, right? April was a really rough month in the stock
April was
market.
tough. Yeah, down
Yeah,
almost 10%, almost a correction, bear territory.
right, exactly. And then, all of a sudden in May, end of August, or excuse me, end of April and May have rebounded very nicely. And
Mhm.
so people are pretty much even on the year now, or maybe even a little bit above. And so that's a good thing, right? But since President Trump's tariffs began, absolutely dominating the news sector, again, we thought, oh gosh, could there be a recession? But now, Tony, that the U.S. and China have agreed to kind of slash tariffs for 90 days while the negotiations for a longer term agreement continue. There's been a little bit of renewed optimism, right? I mean, you're talking about, hey, okay, this might come to fruition. I think some people, and this starts to become a political conversation at some point here too. But and we're not going to do that. But when you talk about what President Trump was ultimately trying to do, is not to say, okay, we're going to keep 125, 140% tariffs on Chinese goods coming in. No, it was about just setting the stage for negotiating a fair and reasonable deal, right? And I think a lot of people kind of knew that and didn't really get nervous, but I can totally also understand the other side of this, which is, hey, this is we don't know if this is a good thing. I mean, now we got companies that aren't even giving us guidance anymore when they come out with their earnings, and we're going, oh my gosh, there's just too many question marks, and it's just too wild, I guess you could say.
Sure.
But again, these conversations have gotten better. The negotiations are working through themselves. We've got the Great Britain negotiations this past week, and so the point is that when we talk about President Trump and he's the total reset with China, you've heard those conversations.
Yep.
We talked about the slashing the retaliatory tariffs from 125 to just 10%. These are all things of the market likes because we feel like we don't know ultimately that there is an end to all of this, and that we will come out better on the other side. Now, again, whether that comes to fruition or not, but that's what's caused the fears to ease when it comes to the recession.
Well, and the market certainly reacted favorably to the news that we reached an agreement with China and that we weren't going to have 125, 145 percent tariffs. That the market really reacted positively to that. So,
and I think it's also important to note, Tony, that with the announcement of the 90 days pause, right, on the 125 tariffs, it's not a ticking clock, if you will. It's more of a path to a resolution. I mean, that's really what it is. And so what we're talking about is getting these things worked out to where we can have a long-term solution, and that's what it's all about, right? The momentum matters, right? We're talking about now that we've had the market rebound quite a bit. And like I said, most people are back to even on the year, maybe a little bit above. Now we're talking about momentum. And so then that's a powerful thing, Tony. That's a powerful thing in life, right? Is momentum, right? If you get good momentum going, usually good things continue to happen. If you have bad momentum, sometimes those continue to happen as well. So momentum is a powerful thing, and we're using that right now. Whether you're managing a portfolio, building a business, or just trying to make smart money decisions, it's heading in the right direction financially for a lot of folks. So you can see your statements come about here in the next few weeks, and you will see what I'm talking about when it comes to some of the momentum that we've seen in the stock market.
Yeah.
Okay. So
and obviously, Brock, it is important. So you think there's a chance that these could become permanent? I hope so, or a more long-lasting agreement hopefully will be reached, right?
100%. And I would say that if you look at another thing is that those sector-specific tariffs, Tony. It's worth noting, that some of the tougher sector-specific tariffs, like the ones on electric vehicles and steel, those are staying put. It's not all tariffs, right? And so some of these things have gotten through. Some of the parts on automobiles, right? If you remember, some of those were staying intact. So there are industries that you could see specific, not all, all encompassing of our economy. You could see sector-specific recessions, right, when it comes to some of these things that the tariffs will affect going forward. And so we'll see. As of the recording today, right, we came out with an inflation report from the UK, and it was much, much higher than expected. We are not facing that here, right?
No, our last inflation number was down to 2.4, I think.
Exactly. And so And I think that that's also, people have talked a lot and asked me a lot of questions lately about like interest rates, Tony.
Sure.
And so, when we're talking about the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, and him controlling, or them controlling, the Fed board controlling interest rates, and now people are saying I can only see one reduction in interest rates this year. So just kind of given, and this has everything to do with easing the fears of a recession. The Fed, just to understand this, Tony, the Fed Reserve has two mandates. Okay, one is jobs. So we
Yep.
need to keep an unemployment rate that is satisfactory, right? And
Yep.
so if unemployment continues to tick up, which it has not, and the second mandate is to make sure that we don't have. So first one is jobs, and the second mandate is to make sure that inflation stays intact and under control. And so we just mentioned that, right? 2.5%, 3%, that's good. Unemployment, anything under 5. I mean, if you can have 95% of your employment force in the United States being employed, those that are willing and able,
Huge for the economy.
huge for the economy. And
Yeah.
we're there. And so just to give you, and I'm not defending anybody, by the way, okay? All I'm saying is to look at the perspective of what President Trump wants to do as far as lowering rates. He's trying to control, that aspect of it. And it's just, that's not the president's job, right? That's
Right.
not his job, is to say who's going to be in control of the Fed after their term. Yeah, we can do that. But we're not firing Fed, chairmen, and he's
Right.
backed off of all of that, which is good.
Yeah.
And so the point is, though, is that if those two mandates are true of the Federal Reserve and we're not adjusting, and by the way, that's a common theme, right? I mean, Jerome Powell, do you remember the word transitory?
Yeah.
So,
Transitory.
yeah, come on, man. What?
He got in
So
trouble for that one.
he did. And so the point is that we need to react appropriately, and that's
Yeah.
what President Trump is saying. It's like, hey, you have two mandates, both of those are great, inflation and unemployment. So, like, why aren't we lowering rates? And the whole purpose of him wanting to do that, obviously, would be to spur economic activity. When rates are down, you have people borrowing money and buying things, whether it's a home or a car or whatever it may be. A lot of home sales have slowed in a lot of areas because of 7 and 8% interest rates. And so that's the whole conversation. And so if we can continue to move forward and not, and I think, let's be honest. So I think that the Federal Reserve, in my opinion, is saying, look, we don't know what the long-term effects of these tariffs are. So we're not willing to say that the economy is going to continue to be good, those two factors. We're not going to bet on the fact that inflation is going to stay low, because that's one of the effects that could happen from a tariff situation where you have higher tariffs, and that's going to cause everything to be more expensive, and that's going to cause inflation to go up. That's the reason why the Federal Reserve is not, because if they just went off the true mandates, then they would reduce rates.
Right.
But anyway, so again, we're getting a little bit of political, but it's just informing people of what's going on.
Well, that's
And
how the market reacts, and that's why
yeah,
people are worried about recession.
right,
Is, hey, if Trump posts a social media post, the market reacts. If somebody
right.
sneezes in China, the market reacts, and you can't get over emotional. And I turn on the news, and the news says they're talking about recession. So they always are. I mean, the sky is always falling if you
Oh
listen to
yeah.
the 24-hour news channels, right?
Oh gosh, it's brutal. I don't like watching either
It's
side of
brutal.
those things, man.
Yes, it's
I
brutal.
don't. Anyway, but the point is that the uncertainty of what the tariffs could do to the economy and in driving inflation is why the Federal Reserve has backed off lowering rates. That's the period. That's I don't know how else to say it. You can tell me whatever you want to tell me. I'm not going to believe you, because I believe that pretty steadfast. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Well,
so
I think as long as inflation went down, they're not going to continue lowering rates. If it goes up, they might even raise rates. I don't know. I think that they're going to keep the rates about the same, maybe once, huh?
Yeah,
You think?
that's the consensus, right?
Yeah.
And so at the beginning of the year, though, it was like, hey, everything's going great. Let's reduce rates 3 or 4 times, right? Because inflation was low, we're going to increase or decrease rates.
Right.
So anyway, the point is that we'll see what happens. Nobody knows. Nobody has a crystal ball. I think it's the unknowns, right? Because even with a lot of companies reporting earnings, they're saying, hey, listen, we've always provided guidance on what we think we're going to do this year from a company standpoint. And now we're taking that off the table because we don't know how the tariffs are going to affect our business. So that's part of the deal too, is the unknown as to why they haven't lowered rates. But the point is that as of right now, yeah, we're starting to see maybe a little inflation overseas, but we're doing great here. And hopefully that continues. And hopefully these long-term resolutions come about with the tariff negotiations, and
Yeah.
everything's going to be hunky-dory. I think that's going to be the case, but who knows? I could be totally wrong on that.
Right. You don't have a crystal ball. Nobody does. However, let's talk about, before we go, let's talk
Yeah.
about how this affects people. So the bottom line is you shouldn't let tariff talks, good or bad. We've had some really good news lately with the agreement with China, the agreement with the UK.
Yeah.
We've had good news
Mhm.
and inflation, good news here.
Mhm.
Overseas, maybe, the UK struggling a bit with inflation.
Yeah.
But you shouldn't panic, right? Even if somebody uses the R word, the
So
dreaded
glad you brought
recession.
Yep, I'm so glad you brought that up, Tony. That's perfect, because, people and we've talked about this so much, making decisions based off of emotions,
Yeah.
never a good idea.
No.
Like, have a strategy, be nimble and be active in your strategy, but don't make bad decisions based off of your emotions. So, like, hey, there's a recession coming, I'm selling all of my stocks. No, that's dumb. Don't do that. Okay. And so stay disciplined, stay active, maybe maneuver different investments like what we do for our clients, but don't sell out. Don't make big allocation changes based on what you think might happen. And by the way, so the recession fear, right? There's actually a little measurement for this, has dropped below 50% now, Tony. So just it kind of was creeping up there for a while, but it's well below
Sure.
50% now. And as far as the likelihood of a recession coming about, but again, nobody, no one knows that either. So,
Right.
but yeah, making decisions based in your portfolio based on what you think might happen or based on what's going on politically is usually not a good idea. And so just making sure that you have a strategy, and that's the point. Like, not a lot of people actually do have a strategy, and that's where we can come in at Alspaugh Wealth Management. Give us a call at 573-332-7855, or look us up on the web at alspaughwealthmanagement.com. And again, you can check out other shows. You can check out our YouTube channel and just search Alspaugh Wealth Management to get a hold of us. All right. So anyway, yeah, Tony, talking about that. Now, really, when we're talking about making sure you don't make bad decisions in your portfolio, let's kind of expand that conversation and making bad decision on your household budget, right? This is the time of year, Tony, that people can easily get derailed, right?
Yep.
Because it's summertime coming up, and we've got trips planned, and we'll spend a little extra money here on this vacation and that vacation, and all of a sudden, after the 3 months is over, you're like, oh, we blew this thing bad. So
Right.
just kind of make sure that you stay disciplined, stay within your strategy, save the amount of money you're supposed to be saving, don't spend too much money. So hopefully this is an encouragement for some people listening to say, hey, okay, we're all excited about this or that, but let's keep our excitement at check and make sure we don't get derailed from our plan. Brock says so. Okay. He
Right.
told me.
Yeah, well, you can make costly mistakes. You've got to work with a financial services professional like yourself, and you've got to know what you're spending. That's huge, and it's such a budget. People cringe, or I don't want to deal with that, or they put it off. When my wife and we sit down at least a couple times a month, look at where we're at for the month. It helps so much. We sleep better, we get along better because we know where our finances are at. I'm telling you, it's worth it.
And you know what, Tony? If you have that, that's everything. right? Who cares what the president is doing? Who cares what the Federal Reserve chairman's doing? Who cares what anything? If you take care of your own household and do what you're supposed to be doing, the rest of it will work out and it will take care of itself, right? In other words, I'm confident that the stock market, no matter what happens in the next few months, that in 5 years it's going to be higher than it is now. Well, if that's the case, why are you so worried about it? Take care of your household. Take care of your budget. Make sure you're doing what you're supposed to do, and everything will be just fine.
Yes.
All right. Yeah, there we go, Tony. So anyway, I hope this has helped people kind of talk about the recession and the fears, and I think it's easing for sure, and for a good reason. And so I think that we'll continue to see that. I think that you need to focus and stay focused and disciplined on your budget. Again, this is the time of year where it gets derailed for a lot of folks. So just keep doing what you're doing and give us a call at Alspaugh Wealth Management, 573-332-7855. Or again, look us up on the web at alspaughwealthmanagement.com.
All right. Thanks, Brock. And listeners, that does it for today's episode of the Retirement Playbook with our host, Brock Alspaugh.